She reached up to the sky of stars and caught the red-hot light of the North Star. She opened the earth, walking with blood-soaked feet. She challenged the whip, the gun, the knife. She challenged the fire, pulled from the bodies of slaves, made into laws.
Good afternoon, and as always, welcome back. You know, if you rely solely on mainstream Western media for your news, you'll only get information on certain issues and only receive limited information or narratives about those limited issues that are perceived to be favorable to the West. The last time many people heard anything about the conflict in Haiti was when the then vice presidential candidate J.D. Vance told that lie that Haitian immigrants in Springfield, Ohio were eating people's pets. What's going on in Haiti today? Let's connect some dots and find out.
Connecting the Dots with Dr. Wilmer Leon, where the analysis of politics, culture, and history converge.
Welcome to the Connecting the Dots podcast with Dr. Wilmer Leon, and I am Wilmer Leon. Here's the point. We have a tendency to view current events as though they occur in a vacuum, failing to understand the broader historical context in which most events take place. During each episode, my guests and I have probing, provocative, and in-depth discussions that connect the dots between these events and a broader historic context in which they occur, thus enabling you to better understand and analyze the events that impact the global village in which we live. On today's episode, the issue before us is, as is being reported by Haiti Liberté, last week the political atmosphere in Haiti was so tense that the announced protest movement panicked the authorities. The population was called upon to take to the streets, weapons in hand, to drive out the illegal occupants imposed by the West on the Prime Minister's office and Via de Acule. And my guest will help me with that pronunciation. My guest is a distinguished faculty member of arts, professor of African and African diaspora studies in the Institute of Race, Gender, Sexuality, and Social Justice, and faculty associate in the Department of Anthropology at the University of British Columbia, Vancouver. She is also a research associate at the Center for the Study of Race, Gender, and Class at the University of Johannesburg. She is Dr. Jemima Pierre. Dr. Pierre, welcome back. It's been way too long.
It has been too long. Thank you so much for having me, Wilmer.
First of all, if you would comment on the statement that I made in my open, and that is, if folks solely rely on Western media, they are putting themselves at an incredible disadvantage, because the information that most of them are going to receive is that which is going to support that dominant Western narrative, which really has nothing to do with journalism and news and everything to do with propaganda.
Well, definitely. I mean, we know this from everything, right? And the propaganda machine really sets up, is part of the ideological work of the ruling elite. And so we get to see what they want us to see. They frame the discussion in ways that they want us to understand it. I mean, we can see that everything from the genocide in Gaza to the Ukraine, to the special military operation by Russia on Ukraine. And so it reminds me of what Malcolm X says. The newspaper will have you hate the oppressed and love your oppressors. And so in that sense, it's all about propaganda. And we're also taught to learn about things happening in snippets that seem completely detached from broader discussions about society. So we get apart. So you don't hear about Haiti, for example, which I know we're going to talk about today. You don't hear anything about Haiti for months on end, from weeks on end, and then you hear a snippet. There's no context, and they never feel it necessary to give context because it doesn't serve them to give the right context. And so this is how people absorb news. They get the headline, the snippet, no context, but then what they get is what the ruling elite want them to get in order to create the ideological framework for the ruling elite to get away with all their terrible actions in the U.S. and outside.
So I was talking about this recent protest in Haiti, and Haiti Liberté reports the government felt so threatened that they rushed to call on CARICOM for help. What frightened them even more was the official support of the initiative from former police commissioner Guy Philippe, later of the FREN, the Revolutionary Force of National Understanding Party, which is very hostile to the Presidential Transitional Council. The goal was to march on the Prime Minister's office and the Presidential Council's headquarters to demand their departure in order to put the country back on the right track. I think there are a couple of things in this paragraph. First of all, what is leading to the current wave of unrest in Haiti?
Well, what's happening in Haiti is what I think we have to understand how the West works in the region. If you trace the violence, for example, that beset places like El Salvador in the 90s, where you had or if you think about the Iran-Contra affair, where the U.S. was basically sending guns to different groups to actually wreak havoc. And what's happening in Haiti is that in the past, there hasn't been, I guess it's always important to contextualize what's happening in Haiti. What's happening in Haiti has always been one of the actually least violent countries in the Caribbean. In fact, the Jamaican government, for example, had a state of emergency for the past 2 years because of gang violence. You had Turks and Caicos with violence. El Salvador is a place of violence. Ecuador has tons of violence. And so Haiti's violence, whatever the violence that you see in the news, has never been as grave as these other places. This so-called increase in gang violence is very recent, in the sense that these groups have become extremely armed in the past 2 years, with military grade equipment coming from the U.S. Most of the guns are coming from the U.S. And it seems like they're being paid to particularly attack specific neighborhoods that I think people want to remove people from in order to take it over. And so Haiti hasn't had a government, a democratically elected government, since 2004, when the U.S., France, and Canada connive to bring a coup d'état against Haiti's last democratically elected president. Well, the first and last, as far as I'm concerned, in Jean-Bertrand Aristide. And so once they did that, they had a coup d'état, which was then consecrated by the UN Security Council, of which the two countries that committed the coup d'état are in, which is the U.S. and France. And so then we had a UN occupation, and was a full military occupation of the United Nations for 13 years, until 2017, where the UN took out most of its forces. and then left a UN office. And so these are the people. So Haiti, to me, has been under occupation, foreign occupation, since 2004. And in that time, from 2004, now we're 21 years, nothing has happened, but the situation has completely deteriorated in that time. In that time, the U.S. has installed, removed. There's been people assassinated. The Haitian state has been completely dismantled. So much so, and to say this, and I have to repeat this because I think we need the context, is that in 2010, Hillary Clinton, the U.S., after the earthquake in Haiti, which was a major earthquake that killed hundreds of thousands, the U.S. insisted that Haitians had elections, despite the fact that most people didn't have housing in the capital, in particular where the earthquake happened. But they paid for these elections, and they put forward their own candidate. When their own candidate did not make the first round, Hillary Clinton flew down to Haiti and changed the election results. And so there's the political party PHTK, which was created by Michel Martelly, a neo-Duvalierist, and Duvalier was the Haitian dictator for 36 years, is the one that has had the political control of Haiti, but also is the one that's been supported by the U.S. and the West. And people say they still hold on to control. They're part of the violence. They still, the Canadian government even sanctioned him. The U.S. government even sanctioned him, but the violence begins with that, with people arming the elite, arming some young men to go in and basically do their bidding in certain neighborhoods, to go against their economic adversaries and so on. And what's happened over the years is that the more arms are coming, the less the fact that there's no state. Haiti does not have a state. There hasn't been elections since 2016. The vacuum that's left over is opened up then for these young people who are armed to actually wreak havoc in the neighborhood. And there's no rhyme or reason to what they're doing. And that's the thing. But what we have to talk about then is, why is it that the U.S. is allowing, they know exactly where the arms come in. Why is it the U.S. allowing all these guns come into Haiti? And why is it that there's only certain neighborhoods that are being attacked? And we have to understand that there's a sinister move behind all this. And I think part of it is the continued need to control Haiti, to keep it, to not have any democratic transition, in order for the U.S. to rule it. They're trying to change the constitution again, like they did in 1915 when they occupied Haiti. And I think they really want to keep Haiti as a space so that when they go, for example, and attack China or whatever they want to do, they want to have this captured labor force so that they can use. They've always, for example, wanted a military base in Haiti. The Haitian government has never allowed it, which is why they ended up with Guantanamo, Cuba. I think they want cheap labor, but Haitians are still on their land, and so they have to find a way to remove them from their land so that they can push them into factories to get more goods. And so there's a lot of like geopolitical reasons why this violence has increased. But the key one is the coup d'etat in 2004 that destroyed the state. And now Haiti does not have a government. What it has is, a so-called presidential commission, which is made up of 9 people that were handpicked by Anthony Blinken. And then, with the CARICOM, the Caribbean community, participating doing the West bidding in imposing a leadership on Haiti that the Haitian people don't want and never chose.
Kevin Baptiste, thank you so much for that very generous $20 super sticker. We greatly appreciate that contribution. You talked about the guns, and there are a couple of points that I want to stress to kind of put this in context. And one is, Haiti is an island, which means the guns must be shipped in via boat or flown in via aircraft. So the people that are receiving the weapons are not in control of the ports, and they're not in control of the airport. And we've made these points before, but I always think it's very important to reiterate these data points. I think it's hard to determine the average monthly salary in Haiti, but from what I've seen, it averages between $150 to $200 a month per person. A Smith & Wesson 40 caliber pistol costs about $800. So one has to ask oneself, where does somebody who makes, let's even say $300 a month on average, where do they get the money to buy an $800 pistol, let alone the ammunition to go with it? A sniper rifle costs about $1,500 to $1,700. We talk about military grade equipment. So who's allowing the weapons onto the island, and who is paying for these weapons, since the average Haitian can't afford them? Dr. Pierre. Are those sensible points to make and sensible questions to ask?
Well, they are. I mean, that's what everybody's asking. You know, in the past, you know, we always can say it was the elite, the elite in Haiti. You know, there are these small groups, these families that basically, you know, control the economics and politics of the country. And so in the past, they would provide them with guns. You know, the other place where guns come through is the Dominican Republic, because you know, Haiti is part of an island, but that island has two countries, the Dominican Republic and Haiti. And a lot of times when police have caught people smuggling, it's been through that border, the Dominican Republican border. But yes, and so we do wonder that. I do think some of these groups that are armed have found a way. I think part of it is also the reality is that people started these groups, they started arming these groups, and some of them have gone rogue, right? They're not doing what they're supposed to do. They become more powerful, and they do that through kidnapping, through money, you know, through extortion of communities, of certain people they think have money, and so that's what's been happening. But it seems to me, I think you're absolutely right to be asking the question. It's just like, well, how is it that they can afford a $5,000 rifle or whatever it is that they have? Because these are huge guns. And so you have to and then people are saying there's also the growing drug trade. And I remember, right, and I remember, I don't know if you remember, but the President Petro of Colombia actually said that, you know, there has been a growth of like the trade of drugs from Colombia through Haiti. So Haiti becomes this site. And I don't know if you remember in 2021 where Haiti's president was assassinated. It was done by Colombians. You know, about 26 Colombians came in. And so I do think there's a sinister thing that happened where it was, at first it was like they were funding these armed groups, and I think a lot of them became autonomous. So they're able to use drugs to get access to resources, then to get, you know, they become part of the drug trade, and then they become they have access to these guns. But then these guns, you have to wonder, well, who is it in the US that is shipping all these guns to the Haitians, and what's going on there?
Well, you mentioned Colombia, and we know that well, most people should know that Colombia is, I think, the southern hemispheric training ground for what do you want to call them? America's hit squads, for lack of a better word. Just as we have the School of the Americas here, where the United States brings Central and South American leaders to train to carry out America's dastardly deeds. Colombia is one of the training grounds that the United States uses. So it's no accident, or it's no mystery that the hit squad that assassinated the Haitian president in 21 came from Colombia.
Yeah, definitely. And you know, I don't know the details and all the details about that hit squad. What we do know is that the U.S. is actually keeping a lot of the evidence, and the U.S. has a lot of evidence around this assassination in 2021, and some of it that it's put under. They're saying they put them under wraps for national security. So a lot of people are thinking that there was, you know, for people who saw the video of when the groups attacked the president's house, one of them was screaming, "This is a DEA operation." And so we also have to know that, the DEA, and drug enforcement authorities, that's very much, some of these are some of the most corrupt people, but they're running around the Latin America and the Caribbean as the gods of that area. So we don't know how much, what hand the U.S. had in that assassination, what hand DEA officers the U.S. have in this drug trade that's actually influencing how how powerful these armed groups get. But I wouldn't put anything past the U.S., right? If we go back again to the Iran Contra affair, in terms of creating a situation where places are completely destabilized, so that then they can come in and do what they need to do. Because Haiti has been the most difficult place for them to pacify, and that's the reality. Unlike other places that have become puppets of the U.S. Haiti's surrounded by, all these people who've basically sold out their sovereignty to be puppets. All the countries that surround Haiti, outside of Cuba and Nicaragua and Venezuela, you have a bunch of puppets that conduct military exercises for the U.S., that follow all of the neoliberal politics of the U.S. And Haiti is the most difficult to pacify because people keep fighting back. And so it wouldn't be a surprise, that this is like a very much planned a planned what's the word I'm looking for? It's planned disturbance in order to wreak havoc in the community in order for the U.S. to still control Haiti at this point, because at this point they still control Haiti. We don't have any democracy.
I think it's important for people to understand some of the parallels here, and I'm glad you said that Haiti is a very, very difficult country for the United States to take over and control, because the Haitian people have a history of fighting back, very similar to what we see. I think there are incredible parallels that can be drawn between what's happening in Haiti and what's going on right now in Gaza. We keep hearing about the issues around immigration, and a lot of people, of course, are looking at the border between the United States and Mexico as a transit point, as an entry point. A lot of Haitians are coming through that route as well. In fact, immigrants from all over the world, particularly Central and South America, are coming through that route. And I have been saying for a very long time, and I'm sure you're probably tired of hearing me say, that when you look at this immigration issue, you can't look at the immigration issue without understanding the context of American foreign policy and the impact that American foreign policy is having on these countries in question. When J.D. Vance talked about, these Haitian immigrants in Springfield are eating people's pets, nobody was asking the question, well, why are there so many Haitians in Springfield, Ohio in the first place? Because Kamala Harris did not want to have to deal with the question, what is the United States doing in Haiti to drive these people from their homes to Springfield, Ohio? They don't want to have that conversation. They don't want to talk about Kamala Harris's going to the CARICOM meeting along with Hakeem Jeffries, trying to twist the arms of CARICOM to be the black face on U.S. imperialism in Haiti. They don't want to have that conversation the same way Kamala Harris was backing genocide in Gaza. We got to connect these dots, since that's the name of the show. Dr. Pierre.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot to respond to here. There are two things. One of them is the immigrants in Ohio. Well, the first thing I want to say is, the bad mouthing of Haiti is nothing new. It's been happening for 221 years, ever since we became independent, ever since we started fighting and became the first free Black republic in the world, the first free republic in the Western Hemisphere, because the U.S. still had slavery. And so
Let me jump in just quickly because if I don't do it now, I'll forget the point. Didn't we just celebrate the 200th anniversary of Haiti having to pay reparations to France? Wasn't that last week?
That was last week. So yeah, I'll definitely talk about that
Okay.
When you want. But yeah, so part of that is, the bad media on Haiti. That's that goes without saying, and it's been happening for more than 200 years. During the Haitian Revolution, when we defeated Napoleon's army, they presented us as cannibals and savages, right? Even though 200 years of slavery on the island, where the life expectancy of an average African on the island was 5 to 7 years, but we're the ones that call the savages in terms of fighting for freedom. And so yeah, and JD Vance, he had to present his racist bona fides to go along with Trump, and Trump has always said Haiti was a shithole country. I don't know if you remember that.
Mm-hmm.
But the thing about Ohio is a dead little town that
Right.
needed these immigrants, and these were not even the asylum seekers. These were people who were there legally, working with work permits. It wasn't like they didn't have papers. They were very much legal. And so, but what it shows is just, it's easy when it comes to Black immigrants to actually get away with all kinds of things. And, Biden was
revitalized the economy of that town.
Yes, they did.
People in Springfield welcome the Haitian immigrants, because with Haitian immigrants comes business, and that revitalized the economy of Springfield. They don't want to talk about that.
No, they don't. And part of that, and I think you're absolutely right in terms of the immigrant situation, because the reason Haitians, for example, have been in the U.S. has always been, the large waves of Haitian migration to the U.S. happen the migration happens in waves, and it happens when there are problems in Haiti. So the U.S. was supporting a dictatorship for 36 years, and when life became really bad for people in the late 70s and 80s, people started migrating, and then there was a coup d'état. The U.S. is behind the coup d'état in 1991, when you had large-scale migration because there was so much violence against those who supported the democratically elected president. So there's a wave. And then there was a wave of migrants in 2012, 2013 from Brazil, because Brazil was part of the occupation force through the UN of Haiti from 2004 to 2017. And people go where the occupiers are. And Brazil opened up the space for cheap labor, sent all these Haitians there. And then the economic downturn happens in Brazil. So these Haitians then started leaving and going through Central America to get to California, to get to the US. And now I have to say, Trump is talking about deportation, but Biden was sending a deportation flight to Haiti almost every single day throughout his term. Biden was worse. Obama was worse with deportation, even though Trump is
the
talking
deporter in chief is what Obama was called.
And Biden, even the days of, even when they closed, the U.S. can control Haitian space. The U.S. basically closed off Haiti's airspace, I think, in the fall, and then canceled all flights. All U.S. airlines told them they could not fly to Haiti. Meanwhile, there are like 3 deportation flights a week flying into Haiti, U.S. deportation flights. So when it comes to immigration and things like that, we always have to link it to U.S. imperialism in the country. You have to see, what is it that, people don't want to leave their homes. Nobody wants to leave home.
Right.
People who wants to leave home and go to a place where they're treated like they're criminals, who wants to leave home unless home is so bad that they have to leave? And home is bad because the U.S. and the West have been really messing with Haiti since it got its independence in 1804. So that's the part. And we can switch now, because I did want to really talk about the 200th anniversary of the ransom that France basically forced onto Haiti, which basically helped build, for example, the Eiffel Tower. How many people know that the Eiffel Tower was built with money gotten from Haiti? Right. So people don't know these things. The development of France comes from money from Haiti. And so I wanted to talk about that, because
before we get to that, can you speak to one more point?
Yes.
And that is, Haiti has been for years, was self-sufficient for years. Haiti grew its own and exported rice. But I think part of the decimation of the Haiti rice production had to do with NAFTA. I think the United States, and if I have this wrong, please set the record straight. But as I understand it, Haiti, with the black pig, was able to sustain itself with its own pork production, but the United States, wanting to export American pork into Haiti, kills off the Haitian black pig so that the Haitians will import American pork, which are I think have two totally different tastes and flavors and textures. I love griot, and so I got a little something affinity for Haitian pork, but and timber that Haiti also was very strong in timber, but the United States goes in, deforests Haiti, which then causes big problems with hurricanes and rains and all that kind of stuff. So the United States has been involved. All of this to say that the United States has been involved in a number of projects that decimate the domestic economy of Haiti and contributes to the poverty and the confusion in the country.
Well, definitely. And the perfect example is the rice, and I think it is important to think about that because I think the U.S. passed a rice farm bill in the mid 80s that basically increased subsidies for U.S. farmers, rice farmers, and basically they dumped that rice on Haiti. And this is 1980, 85, which was right. They still had the dictatorship who accepted that. And the pig, where they kill off our indigenous black pigs to replace them with the white pigs from the Midwest. It's the same thing they did with the rice. And so they forced the rice, and then and so the imported rice was so cheap because of subsidies that the U.S. was providing to U.S. farmers was so great that they're basically dumping rice on Haiti. And undercut local rice production because the rice, and it used to be stamped with Miami rice on it. So it was like in these bags that had Miami rice. And they were so much cheaper than the local agriculture folks, the farmers used to protest all the time in the 80s. And then after, the dictatorship fell, you have Aristide come into power. What ends up, you have more the growth of agribusiness. It was called there's this company called American Rice Inc. Which basically dumped even more rice and completely killed off the rice industry in Haiti. And so yes, the U.S. has done that in many ways. It's killed off farming. I mean, but if people should watch this there's a great documentary that I used to teach, and that's from the 80s, and it's called Life and Debt. And it's about neoliberalism, but it's about how it is that all these Western, particularly U.S. Companies would go into these countries and basically kill local production. And there's a cute story in there about how they basically killed off the Jamaican milk production by dumping powdered milk on Jamaica and closing and helping and pushing the local production of actually raw milk as opposed to powdered milk to be killed. Like Jamaica imports most of its things these days, and because of these policies. And this is what's always happened to the developing world, and Haiti is no stranger to these policies where we bear the brunt of U.S. support of its own farmers, of U.S. support of its own economy on our people's backs.
And I just want to explain for those that may not understand, when you use the term dumping, what product dumping is when you export a particular quantity of product into a market and you sell it below your cost to manufacture. That's where the farm subsidies come in. That's how the United States was able to dump so much American rice into Haiti, because they were doing it at a cost that was below what the farmers were paying to produce it. That when they talk about dumping products, that's what they mean by dumping products. And also, I believe it's Samuel Yet in his book, The Choice, talks about one of the reasons why we went into Vietnam and started the Vietnam War was because we were afraid of rice production out of Vietnam was going to offset the ability of Midwestern rice farmers, American rice farmers, to sell rice on the international market. That's another story for a whole nother hour. But
Right.
I just wanted to connect that dot, that we're not only dumping rice in Haiti, many will say we started the Vietnam War over rice. Now, Dr. Pierre and the 200th anniversary
Yeah,
of reparations from Haiti.
I gotta quickly say also, though, you know, if we're talking about terrorists, what Clinton did when he became president in the U.S. against Haiti was basically force the Haitian government, which was a military dictatorship at the time, to lower its tariffs on rice, so that you know his people in Arkansas and in the Midwest who were dumping rice on Haiti did not even have to pay taxes. They didn't have to pay tariffs. So that also what lowered the price of
Okay.
rice for Haitian for Haitians. Now, one of the things that last week I was at the UN actually as part of this group called the Collective Haitian Afro-Descendants, which is the collective of Haitian Afro-descendants. And the goal was to basically link the Haiti specific fight to the broader fight for reparations for slavery. And so the UN, it was the UN permanent meeting of the Permanent Forum for the People of African Descent. But, you know, the UN, I have so many problems with, so that's a whole other conversation. But the point, though, is what's been happening last week, also April 17th, was the 200th anniversary of when France extorted what's the equivalent of more than $21 billion from Haiti. And it took, so what France did in 1825, France lost to the enslaved Africans and Haiti became independent in 1804. And people have to understand, when we talk about a blockade, the entire West put on a blockade, economic, political blockade against Haiti. This, how dare this African country, rise, right? But the U.S. still had slavery. The entire Caribbean and Latin America still had slavery. So none of the European countries, especially none of the countries in the region, because they're all colonies, recognize Haiti. So imagine this poor country that fought like a 13-year civil war, a brutal war against slavery, come out of it impoverished, but no one would recognize it. But from 1804, the next 2 decades, the French government kept trying to take Haiti back. And so it's very important if you look through the records, and I have to give credit to Haitian American historian Marlene Dowd, who basically says up until 1825, they had written plans, this is in the archives, plans to exterminate the Haitian population. They would say things like, we need to kill everyone above 12 years old. We need to kill all the Negroes. Because Haiti was French, Saint-Domingue, as it was called, was the richest colony in the Americas. And so when the Haitians became independent, they spent two decades trying to come up with plans to reinstitute slavery, to reattack the island. And every year or so, they would surround the island. They would show up, and they would say, we're gonna take this back. We're going to kill everybody. It will be easy to kill everybody. And I think it wasn't until they realized that the Haitians would rather die completely, would rather die than give up their sovereignty, that they decided then that they would settle for what they call a payment, a compensation for the loss of property. Now imagine this: you have the white enslavers demanding compensation from those they enslaved for having lost those they enslaved. But the only reason that they were able to get this deal was because they showed up in Haiti. They surrounded the island. They surrounded Haiti with 14 gunships, 500 cannons pointed at Haiti. And they said if they did not sign this, where they charged the Haitian government 150 million francs as compensation. They said they didn't sign it. They would establish a blockade where nothing would come in. They would bomb the country, and they would establish a blockade. And by then, our great leader, Jean-Jacques Dessalines, had already died. And so this leader in the South signed the petition. And I think they signed the petition because I think they were exhausted of 2 decades after independence, trying to stab off these French who wanted their land back. So they paid for this. And mind you, remember, the U.S. sold, France sold the Louisiana Territory for a measly, 10 times less, right? Which doubled the size of the U.S. And so the French then did this indemnity, which was the majority of Haiti did not have the money to pay it. So then they had to turn around and borrow money from French banks at extremely expensive interest to pay France back. And they did not finish paying that debt till 1947, more than 100 years, about 120 years after that debt. So and it took most of their cover. So like, it would be like 80 to 90% of the Haitian state's money every year went to paying this debt. So much so that people say the U.S. occupation of Haiti in 1915 was part of, they took loans from French banks, from U.S. banks, and part of it was basically to make sure that the Haitians paid their debt, this independence debt. So while this new country could not invest in education, could not invest in infrastructure, France was making so much money from the country, and they were investing in their infrastructure. They were investing in their education, and so on and so forth. And so I want to make a connection, though, to this, because most people don't remember. The cause of this debt is one of the key reasons why France and the U.S. removed Haiti's elected president in 2004, because Jean-Bertrand Aristide in 2003 had called on France to pay this debt back. He had a conference with scholars from all over, and then he had come up with the number, which was $21 billion that France owed, and he basically put in a formal request for compensation. And soon after, there was the coup d'état to remove him from office, and then the caretaker, so-called prime minister that the U.S. put in place after the coup d'état immediately removed the claim that Aristide had put forward to get the compensation back. And so what's interesting now is that there's a big momentum. People forget that it was Aristide that lost the presidency for first calling for this reparation, but now there's a groundswell of people asking for compensation. And a lot of people who are asking for Haitian compensation, because they say it's such a clear case where it's easily done, that we can use that case as an entry point for other claims for reparations for the rest of the populations of African descent.
Let me thank you, first of all, for that utterly brilliant explanation. CWO2, thank you for that $10 super sticker, and looking forward to more discussion on food sovereignty. Robert Brown, thank you for that $4 super sticker. Greatly appreciate that. We really do. Let's move back to where we are. Oh, first of all, the gunship diplomacy that was used in terms of surrounding Haiti to get that petition signed was also the similar tactic that was used on the Sandwich Islands, which we now know to be Hawaii, to get the Queen of Hawaii to sign over the Sandwich Islands to the United States, which we now call Hawaii. And that was over sugar production, I believe. So I just wanted to connect that dot so that people can see that these are tactics and processes. And when you talked about that there was this plan in France to kill all of the Haitians over the age of 12, again, that just makes me think about Gaza and what the Zionists are doing to the Palestinians in Gaza. But now, if we move forward to the current circumstance, there's a piece you did called "The United States is the greatest gangster in Haiti," and you talk about the fact that Trump. I'm going to tie two things together quickly. You talk about the United States being the greatest gangster in Haiti, and then you also talk about the fact that we can't just look at this from the perspective of the Trump administration. We have to understand that all Trump is really doing is following the lead from his predecessors, Joe Biden, Barack Obama, Bill Clinton, and George W. Bush. If you could tie those together for us, please.
Right. I mean, the thing is that the policies in Haiti have not changed regardless of who is in the presidency. You know, the liberals, you know, the Democrats always, they're nicer in their language. They won't call Haiti a shithole country, but they treat Haiti like it's a shithole country. I don't know if people remember in 2021 when the Texas Republicans made this big deal about saying that there's a horde of Black Haitians coming through the Texas border. Mm-hmm. And then there are all these pictures of these Texas Rangers looking like they're whipping these Haitians on horse. This was under Biden administration. What people don't know, so the Biden administration was embarrassed, right? Because they saw it looked like, you know, these white police on horses whipping these Africans. But you know what people don't know is that within 2 days, Biden had deported like 6,000 or 7,000 of those people, you know, and they, you know, what people don't realize, and I hope people remember this, every person in the world has the right to go to a border and request asylum. There's nothing illegal about requesting asylum. Mm-hmm. And the US, as well as some other countries, has criminalized coming to a border to ask for asylum. And that's what these people were doing. They just wanted to come to the border and ask for asylum, and they treated them like criminals. But my point, though, is Biden is the one that was doing all the deporting. It's Obama, for example, because I used to live in Southern California and I used to work with immigration organizations down there. It's Barack Obama that started actually imprisoning asylum seekers. You know, especially the Haitian ones. You know, before they could come through and ask for asylum, and they would be granted entry, and then until their case went through. In 2016, Obama started keeping them in prison, right? And so the immigration policy is similar, but also U.S. foreign policy doesn't change much. And I don't know what people don't realize. There's a continuation of policy. Let me give you one quick example. As you know, you have Elon Musk and the Doge, whatever people are mm-hmm. cutting things, right? Are cutting they say they're cutting USAID or bringing it under the State Department. They're cutting funds, they're cutting foreign aid and so on and so forth. You know what they did not cut was the funding for the foreign mercenaries from Kenya that Biden had brought into Haiti. There's still about, you know, 400 or 500 Kenyan mm-hmm. mercenaries in Haiti. Trump did not cut that funding. If it's so, let's ask ourselves, how is it that they're cutting USAID? They're saying, you know, we're gonna bring all our money and whatever. What is it about Haiti that made them the shithole country? Why would you pay for the Kenyans to stay there when you're cutting off everything else? So that tells you the continuity of policy, regardless mm-hmm. of who's in office. Some of them might be more, you know, Trump this time is just very different, right? In terms of like the tariffs and so on and so forth. But when it comes to foreign policy, it's been a consistent through line for all these different presidents.
And let me follow up to a point you were making about seeking asylum, that it is U.S. foreign policy, it is U.S. immigration policy, it is also consistent with international law, that you have the right as an asylum seeker to go to a country, ask for asylum, and that country is obligated, and I underscore the word obligated, to give you a hearing on your asylum request. And the data is very clear that when the United States was operating under its law and processing these requests as it was supposed to, over 90% of the people that were seeking asylum actually returned to court for their court dates. the common narrative is, oh, they come here, they request asylum, and then they disappear and they never come back. That's not true. Over 90% of those individuals from whatever countries they were coming from, but most of them coming from Central and South America, because of American influence and impact on their economies, they would request asylum, they would be given a court date, and then they would return to court for that court date. That gets overlooked in too many instances, Dr. Pierre.
No, you're absolutely right. And I think, I think one of the things that's happening is this demonization of migrants is a way for the U.S. government, especially this one in particular, to hide the fact that the oligarchy in the U.S. is taking all our resources and our money, the broiler cart, and so what you want to do, you want to throw red meat for your
base
constituencies, right? For your base. And so if you can tell them that their problem is, these, maybe what, 100,000, 200,000 people coming into a country of 350 million who are seeking asylum and who are doing the lowest of the jobs, the dirty work that people can't do, like picking, strawberries and blueberries, like the, Mexican workers do. If you tell them that they're your problem, instead of the fact that the elite, the oligarchy is stealing our money through financialization and not allowing us to have infrastructure, then it's easy to just say blame these immigrants, especially the immigrants of color. So that's red meat for the, to pacify the base, even while you're stripping the base of all its resources. And so it's divide and conquer. It works perfectly in that sense, because most immigrants don't commit crimes. This idea of sending them to El Salvador, which itself, no one should be in there to begin with. This is a concentration camp. Is politics being played with people's lives, but it's also based on a big lie that one does not have the right to request asylum and one does not have the right to be a refugee or an immigrant. And we all have the right. And I hope Americans, especially people in this country, can understand that, look, the way things are going, when U.S. citizens go somewhere else and ask for asylum, they need to hope that people don't treat them the same way that some of them are treating these migrants coming in, and they're only coming in because it's their own country that's causing them to flee.
What is happening with the current situation with the Kenyan police force or the Kenyan troops that are in Haiti assisting the U.S. occupation of the island? I read, I think it was in Haiti Liberté, that one of the police officers was shot, that they are now, that what we thought would happen when this story first broke, 2 years ago, is now actually starting to in fact, explain, because if I understand it correctly, initially we thought that those Kenyans were going to be dispersed throughout the island as part of some peacekeeping force, but actually they were kept in Port-au-Prince for the most part to protect the American embassy. But now they're being dispersed, and now that they're being dispersed, they're becoming targets.
Yeah, I mean, for people who don't know, so the U.S. has been wanting to get a military occupation back into Haiti ever since the UN forces left, even though there's a UN office that still runs Haiti. And so they wanted to bring, it's peacekeeping missions, so-called peacekeeping missions are cheap because the U.S. doesn't have to bear it alone. They don't have to send their military. If they can get people from Nepal, from Sri Lanka, because the UN will bear the cost. And so they've been wanting that. Haitians don't want another military occupation. So we did not want that at all. And they kept pushing. And so finally, they came on this multinational security mission, which makes no sense, right? But it was just like, it was a way to bring in, it was about bringing foreign I call them mercenaries, like, but they did not want.
And again, that's what Kamala Harris and Hakeem Jeffries went to CARICOM to try to force CARICOM to do. Folks need to understand they're sending Black people to black countries to get these people to be the black face on
empire.
American imperialism. That's why I call it minstrel diplomacy.
That's exactly what it is. And so what they did is when the US, the UN would not agree on this because China and Russia in particular, because they're in the Security Council, were saying, well, every time there's something happening in Haiti, you send foreign military invasion, and it doesn't do anything but increase the instability. I mean, the reason we're where we are with no state is because of foreign military intervention. But they still went and did it. And then so after the UN installed this Prime Minister Ariel Henry, who was not elected at all, and so they had him. They basically decided they got William Ruto, who's one of the biggest stooges, I think, when it comes to African stooges, who's the president of Kenya. They basically went 12,000 miles away to Kenya to find some mercenaries to basically so-called lead a mission. That's not a UN mission, even though it's got the UN blessing, but it's a mission that's paid for by the US using Kenyan bodies, to supposedly go and take care of what's going on in Haiti. And then they got some Caribbean countries to participate. I think Belize sent people, Jamaica sent people, and so on. The mission was supposed to have, like, I think 1,000 to 2,000 Kenyans. I don't think they ever got higher than like 500. So they flew these Kenyans all the way from Kenya to Haiti to come sit in, and then they built these tents because the U.S. wants a military base. They destroyed all these houses around the airport. They built these tents, and these Kenyans have been sitting there hanging out, and they're getting paid 10 times more than the average Haitian police. They sit there, and they're only in the Port-au-Prince area. They actually haven't dispersed throughout the nation, but they've only gone. So the couple of times they've gone on patrols, they're sitting there behind the Haitian police, who are getting paid a lot less than they are. And then so they're
being fed a lot better.
And being fed. Look, this was a moneymaker because they had hired a company from Georgia, not the state of Georgia, the country of Georgia, to provide food for the Kenyans. You have Haitians right there. They're in Haiti. You could have gotten some Haitians to cook some very delicious Haitian food, right? So there's that. But this was money, right? Because you get these contracts, right? You get military contracts, you get email contracts, you get food contracts. So this is padding people's pockets. But the point is, we have these foreign soldiers sitting in our country doing nothing. And then the couple of times they've gone out on patrols, 3 Kenyans have been killed. 3 Kenyan police. In fact, I watched Telegram and I've seen bodies, right? So I saw the bodies of the 2 officers that they ambushed and killed. And that's what we said. We said that these foreigners don't know anything about Haiti, and they're bringing in these things. The Kenyans are coming in because they get money of it. And William Ruto wanted like a state visit with Biden, which he got last year, to provide these mercenaries. And you know what I've always said is, like, we actually have friends in the region. We have friends in Venezuela. We could have friends in Colombia. If we had sovereignty, like we used to have sovereignty, we could reach out to those friends. We would not need these people. Like, Kenya did not have bilateral relations with Haiti until a month before their soldiers went there. Kenya never had any relationship with Haiti. Whereas we have leftist governments, we have governments who are anti-imperialist in the region that actually could have helped us, because the number of armed groups and armed people in Haiti is not that many. And I think with a cooperation with Nicaragua, with Venezuela, with Cuba, with Colombia would actually be very helpful in stabilizing the situation than the U.S. bringing in these Kenyans all the way from East Africa.
Robert Brown writes, I hear from my family in Kenya that no one is in favor of Ruto. There are issues in Kenya that deserve more attention. And I'll say, Robert, you're correct, because just to give a very cursory explanation of that, since Kenya received its flag independence, it's not totally independent, it received flag independence, that you have basically 2 tiers. You have those that are loyal to the former colonial power, and in such as Robert Ruto, and then you have those that are of independent mindset. And so, yes, there is this great conflict between those in Kenya, those that support the former colonizer, versus those that are truly looking for independence, similar to what you're now seeing in with the alliance of Sahel states in Mali, in Niger, and Burkina Faso. Those are becoming true independent entities, moving beyond flag independence and actually being able to control their economies and their own destinies. I don't know, Dr. Pierre, if you want to pick up on that.
I just want to quickly say, to me, the Kenyan part is the most disappointing in the sense that what Kenya suffered under the British, just in terms of like going after the Kenya Land and Freedom Party that they derisively called the Mau Mau, the concentration camps, the brutality of British imperialism. You would think people would know better than to provide your blackface for white supremacist imperialism that the U.S. is doing in Haiti. And so that to me has been the most important part. And we only hope that after flag independence, one thing people have to know that most of the real radical African leaders, most of them were either deposed or assassinated. And I think about Burkina Faso and Thomas Sankara, where you have who was one of the more radical leaders, who was assassinated after I think only 4 years in power. And people always worry about that with Ibrahima Thiaw. This is the new leader of Burkina Faso. But so Africa, I think, still has time for a different, a new independence movement that removes all these compradors that were put in place by the West to sell off the riches of the people so that we can get actually real independence in most of these places, similar to what we see that seems to be happening in the Sahel. And so it is, one of the things when the Haitian groups responded to this idea that Kenya was coming, the Haitian civil society groups were very disappointed because they were saying, well, how could you accept to be part of the U.S. Occupation of Haiti instead of being part of support for your brothers and sisters in Haiti? And that's the most disappointing for me. But at the same time, we also warned them, and so I actually think they should be very careful, because I think there's going to be a lot more violence towards the Kenyans because people see them as an occupation force in Haiti.
Final question for you, and as we look at Donald Trump deporting Venezuelans to El Salvador. You touched on that, and we see also what's been happening here with immigrant green card holders, students on student visas, green card holders, people that are here studying. We're looking at Black and brown people that they're trying to deport. You have Donald Trump talking about he's so glad that Bukele in El Salvador has offered to accept what Donald Trump calls America's homegrown. How concerned should African Americans be in the midst of all of this testing of due process? And I believe that the deportation to El Salvador has less to do with immigration and a hell of a lot more to do with testing the limits of the court's defense of due process. How concerned should people here be?
I think Black people, brown people should be very concerned because they're basically, they want to say that they want to send U.S. prisoners. I mean, they've already said that to El Salvador. But let me just say, just last week, Rubio designated all Haitian gangs in the U.S. as terrorist organizations, which opens them up to being deported to El Salvador. Now, how they know who's a member of a gang, who isn't in Haiti, that's going to be something interesting in the sense, right?
Because they all wear no, that's interesting. That's easy. Because they all wear the same kind of baseball hat.
Right. But the other thing is that, can you imagine all the young men who are not part of gangs are going to get caught up in this dragnet, right? I mean, that's also the problem. But they are opening it up. They've already said they're trying to find a way to send out U.S. prisoners. And who are the people who are most vulnerable to the U.S. criminal injustice system is Black and brown folks. Black people get stopped more. They get arrested more. And so the prisons are filled with 2 million people for a reason. A lot of these people are people of color. And I think they're trying to find a way to get rid of these people. and Black and brown people need to be very careful about this. I've also had cases of African Americans being stopped at the border, even U.S. citizens, and being questioned for 2-3 hours, you know, at the border. So they're already doing it now to even U.S. citizens. And people who are not paying attention also realize that it was the 13th Amendment that gave, you know, like birthright citizenship. They're trying to get rid of birthright citizenship. If you support that, just think what that means for indigenous folks, for Black people who didn't even get citizenship till much later. They can strip birthright citizenship. So these things are very scary to think about. But the militarization of the prison industrial complex, which has been happening since the 1033 program, which is like giving police more latitude, funding, you know, raising police budgets, and then dumping, you know, since the war on drugs, filling the prisons with like non-violent offenders. This is the first place they're going to try, and it's going to be Black and brown folks who are going to bear the brunt of this policy. So we need to be very vigilant about what's happening with this, especially when you see there's no checks and balances. I always joke and I said the U.S. claims that it has, you know, the government runs because it has a system of checks and balances. Executive power has been running amok since 9/11. Right? I mean, you know, if you think about like the Patriot Act and the NDAA and so on and so forth, and now we see that the courts don't have any say. The Donald Trump regime can actually ignore the courts, ignore the Supreme Court. And so there's no checks and balances. And we're heading to this place where there's fewer and fewer checks and balances, where the courts are going to give in, and you're going to end up with this, you know, with these things that happen to us, and it'll be too late before we figure out what's been happening to us.
Wow. Well, as always, Dr. Pierre, thank you for that brilliant recitation on the latest. Carol Asserbaum, thank you for that $10 super sticker. That dog Ruto rolled out the red carpet before she died for Queen Elizabeth on a state visit. That's a great point to the point that I was making. Go ahead.
And the answer to that is that the French and the U.S. and French were never allowed to be free, but we don't need to be allowed. We need to just take our freedom. We've done it before, and we'll do it again.
Well said. And also, Haven G1, thank you for that $20 super sticker. Greatly, greatly appreciated. I know, Dr. Pierre, your time is very limited. Thank you so much for your time. Greatly, greatly appreciate it. Look forward to having you back.
Thanks so much for having me. Wonderful to be in conversation with you, Wilmer.
Thank you. Thank you. Really appreciate it. All right, folks. So with that, again, thank you all so much for listening to the Connecting the Dots podcast with me, Dr. Wilmer Leon. There will be a new show tomorrow. We're still working on who my guest is going to be. Well, let me see if I got a response. Let me see here. Wait a minute. I'm getting confused because give me a second, folks. I got a lot of things going on here on live radio. Well, okay. Anyway, please follow and subscribe, leave a review, share the show. And remember, those of you that are, that have subscribed. Oh, that's what you're pinging me for. Thank you. Let me be sure I get this in, because there's a $50 super sticker, a $50 super sticker. I'm trying to see who it's from. Where are we? Oh, Cherie. Wow. Thank you, Cherie, for that $50 super sticker. Thank you very much. So we have set it up so you all can subscribe at a $5 per month rate. And those of you that can, please do. That'll be a phenomenal way for us to be able to not only continue the program, but to extend the program, the depth and breadth of the program as well. So you can subscribe for $5 a month, and that, you know, if we can get 1,000 of you to do that, or 1,500 of you to do that, oh my goodness, we'll be off to the races. We might even take over the world, to show you what we can do with your support. So with all of that, again, thank you all so much for watching today. And you can go back to YouTube. You can watch previous programs. And even though the programs are older, the They are still incredibly relevant. Follow us on social media. All the links are below. Remember, this is where the analysis of politics, culture, and history converge. That talk without analysis is just chatter, and we don't chatter here on Connecting the Dots. It is rhetoric free. See y'all tomorrow. Until then, I am Dr. Wilmer Leon. Have a wonderful remainder of your day. Peace. I'm out.
Connecting the Dots with Dr. Wilmer Leon, where the analysis of politics, culture, and history converge.